Warning: Europe could make Bitcoin permanently illegal. And now there's a deadline here until July 9th. After that, the final version can be passed. And that could mean game over for Bitcoin in Europe. This isn't an April Fool's joke. This is absolutely insane. What's going on here again is unbelievable. This law is the height of absurdity, because Bitcoin could be made illegal or banned here since it's not GDPR compliant. Just think about that. Bitcoin is not GDPR compliant. It says here that if granular data deletion isn't possible on the Bitcoin blockchain, then it may be necessary to delete the entire blockchain. And we all know you can't just delete the Bitcoin blockchain. But the technical committee here, or rather, the European Data Protection Board, said about this. Technical impossibility is not an excuse if data can't be deleted. So, are you not GDPR compliant? In plain language, this means Bitcoin could soon become illegal in Europe. Stay tuned until the end, because I'll also tell you what you can do to turn this whole thing around so that absurdities like this don't get through. And all of this happens because you can't delete transactions. That's why you'd have to just delete the entire blockchain, or not be allowed to own Bitcoin anymore. Guys, where have we ended up? We're actually on the verge of making Bitcoin technically and legally impossible here. And all of this because of some weird GDPR, and because people here just don't get Bitcoin. In theory, every Bitcoin address would then be punishable by law in Europe. How crazy is that? And now go ahead and hit the like button below so this doesn't happen, because we still have time until June 9th, when I could potentially change something before the deadline. We're going to take a look at what this is all about now. But first, seriously, hit that like button, because this is a highly explosive video. I'll also link the full article below, which is all about making Bitcoin illegal here in Europe. We've seen repeated attempts like this before, where there were efforts to take action against Bitcoin. And the background here is that the so-called EDSA, the European Data Protection Board, has published a new directive on the processing of personal data on the blockchain. And it's open for public consultation until June 9th, so basically for public debate. I think that's what it's called. And after that, it will either be finalized or not. If I understood this correctly, you can still add comments and feedback on the guidelines until June 9th. The EDPB welcomes contributions from all stakeholders, including businesses, data protection authorities, civil society, organizations, and individuals. You can still submit complaints to the EDPB here, but whether that will actually be turned into law, I have no idea. I'm just not deep enough into the legal side of things to know that. But just the fact that something like this is even being discussed is absolutely incredible. And now let's take a look at the article that's currently being shared a lot on social media, which also states that the EDPB acknowledges that data deletion on an individual level can be challenging in a blockchain and requires tailored architectures. And therefore, nevertheless, the regulations state that if granular data deletion is not possible, it might be necessary to delete the entire blockchain. So, what this is really about is apparently trying to protect users or something, just to create more privacy or something like that. And the GDPR always says that at some point you have to delete data, including payment transactions and so on. Probably. And if that's simply not possible on the Bitcoin blockchain, then you either have to make Bitcoin illegal, or you have to delete the blockchain. And you can't delete the blockchain. I mean, I don't need to explain that to you. I also found an interesting assessment about this whole law, which says that there is currently no official blanket ban on Bitcoin in the EU. However, regulatory and data protection developments could make using Bitcoin in Europe significantly more difficult or unattractive for businesses. No official ban, but increasing restrictions and legal uncertainty, especially regarding data protection. For private users, Bitcoin remains usable. For businesses, it becomes difficult. And I think that's a pretty good summary here. There's no need to panic right now. It's not like you won't be able to use Bitcoin in 3 days. But it could happen that things get so difficult, especially for entrepreneurs, that it becomes so unattractive to use Bitcoin here in Germany or the EU that people might have to consider looking for other places. I've gone through all of this so far, and it basically says that public keys are considered personal data here. That's the big question. What exactly is a Bitcoin key here? A public Bitcoin key? Is that considered personal data? Or maybe even a Bitcoin transaction? And here it also says that the institution assumes a public key could be considered personal data. As a result, every Bitcoin address would then be a data privacy risk. Anyone with such a public key, or, more accurately, such a public address, as you probably call it here. I don't know what they meant by key. They probably meant a public address. If you have that, you can trace the entire Bitcoin transaction history. So if I have a Bitcoin address from you, or a public key or something like that, maybe they actually mean the public key here. If I have that from you, then of course I can track all the transactions you've ever made and ever will make. If I only have a single address, then I can only trace what's linked to that specific address. And that's a data privacy issue here in the EU. And that's why they feel the need to impose some kind of sanctions. Although, of course, that's completely absurd. I mean, guys, where have we ended up? What year is this? In what kind? What kind of clown world is this? There's really no other way to put it. So now we have the EU demanding that certain data be deleted from the Bitcoin blockchain, even though we all know that Bitcoin is immutable. And that's actually one of Bitcoin's greatest strengths, that we can't change anything on the blockchain. But now they basically want to change Bitcoin so that things can be altered after all. And that's also something that, in the future, could lead to self-custody of Bitcoin becoming increasingly difficult, basically pushing more and more people to keep their Bitcoin on exchanges. I can already tell you now, if you have Bitcoin on exchanges, withdraw them while you still can. Take them off before everything here is fully regulated. I'll put a link below again to a TREZOR hardware wallet, where you can easily and securely keep your Bitcoin safe from censorship and from the EU's overreach. I mean, you shouldn't paint the devil on the wall either. As of the publication date, nothing has actually happened yet that would seriously restrict your freedom to act. But of course, that can change very, very quickly, especially if some nonsense comes out of this consultation and then just gets adopted here. In the extreme case, it even means deleting the entire blockchain, and I already told you about that earlier. If granular data deletion isn't possible, it could mean that deleting the entire blockchain becomes necessary. That would basically be the end of Bitcoin in Europe. But of course, that wouldn't mean the end of Bitcoin worldwide. And you can't actually do that. You can't delete it, and there would be a massive outcry about it. At least I hope so. I mean, that's the problem. Then these absolute regulations come along, nobody notices, and in the end, it actually gets passed. That's why it's important for you to share this video. I had it on my radar. Now the article appears here. I really went and checked again. Does this law really exist? Yes, it does exist. You can also look it up on the official websites and so on. Could you ask in ChatGPT or something like that if the law actually exists? It will clearly pull up the relevant official websites from Merkel and so on for you. The article also says that anonymization is not a solution, since other regulations classify these transactions as risky. Even privacy workarounds like coin chains would be criminalized. So it doesn't help if, for example, you use coins or something like that, or if you try to use privacy tools, because first, the privacy tools will be targeted again, and second, it apparently wouldn't be a solution here. Why? For what reason? Why? No idea, don't ask me. And the craziest thing is, in the article, Alexander Strachsenko, or something like that, is quoted over and over again. And he basically talks about the whole topic here. And he says a really, really crucial sentence here. And it's so important, not just for this topic, but in general for what's happening here in the EU. He says here, reality must adapt to the norm. And how crazy is that? That means we have standards. And it's not that the standards have to adapt to reality, but reality has to adapt to the standards. That means if the EU now says, okay, we have this GDPR regulation, but for example, gravity violates it, then we have to actually change gravity so that the GDPR can be upheld. Or we have to change the day-night cycle so that the GDPR can be upheld. Or we would have to override the natural principles on which Bitcoin 2001 operates, such as the fact that we have irreversibility, that we can't delete things, in order to push this through in compliance with the EU. That means the EU is putting itself in a godlike position here and saying, no, we're not looking at what happens in nature or in the world. Instead, nature, God, humanity, and many others have to conform to the laws we make here, to the standards we push through, to the misdeeds we have planned here. And that's a cognitive dissonance you can hardly imagine being any more extreme. This is an absurdity we've now reached that, I would say, even makes the decadence of late Roman times look ridiculous. And now we really have to stick together, share this video, and get the news out there. But honestly, I don't really know exactly what we can do about it right now. Sure, you can go to the homepage now, write a few comments about it, and so on. Maybe it helps if you, let's say, put a little pressure on people there. So go ahead and get informed about it. I'll put a link down below for you if I find out where you can take part in the consultation. So I just quickly looked it up for you here. There's actually an official homepage here where you can now file a complaint. I'll put the link for you down below. Here you can see guidelines on processing of personal data for blockchain technologies. You go to the link I give you, then scroll all the way down, and here you can download everything, the guidelines, the summaries. But I've already given you a rough overview of what it's about. Then there's a form here, provide your feedback. You click on that and then you can enter. Okay, I'm giving my contribution as, then you have to select individual and so on. Or if you're a company, enter your name, country, email, address. And then you can also attach things here. And at the bottom you can complete a CAPTCHA and probably write a text somewhere as well. I'm probably going to submit my complaint here as well. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you filed the complaint or what exactly you wrote. I've also drafted a sample complaint here. For example, you could write, Dear European Data Protection Board, I am hereby participating in the public consultation on the guidelines February 2025. I consider the current draft to be highly problematic, especially regarding the unrealistic application of the GDPR to public blockchains like Bitcoin. The attempt to ignore technical immutability effectively criminalizes decentralized networks and contradicts the fundamental principle of technological neutrality. I'll also put the sentence down in the video description, so you can theoretically just copy it and send it over. But it's best if you write something yourself, because the important thing, as I understand it here, is that this guideline doesn't go through Parliament, but is published directly by the EDPB itself. That means it can be adopted as is, without any resistance, and will then be authoritative for supervisory authorities, courts, and policymakers. And of course, we want to prevent that. If you don't get involved now, this thing will go through and Bitcoin will become legally vulnerable in the EU, so you should definitely sign up below right now. It's best to also send it to friends, to people, and so on. Just keep sharing all this stuff. If you still want to buy Bitcoin before it gets made illegal here in Europe or the EU, there's a link below to 21 Bitcoin, showing you how you can easily, safely, and simply buy Bitcoin. With the code Bitcoin Hotel, you can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Guys, see you soon. Until then, peace out.